My family is going to go bankrupt. Because of this, my dad dragged me and my younger brother Carter to attend the dinner party of the Song family. Relying on my grandfather's life, saving grace to the old man of the Song family, my dad wants the Song family to have a marriage alliance with the Lin family. Facing my dad's sheer audacity, the people of the Song family looked indifferent. The alpha who was about to be forced into a marriage alliance frowned and had a sullen face. During the toasting, he cast his eyes on me. Immediately afterwards, I heard him say, "The marriage alliance is okay. I want David." Me? Having achieved his goal, my dad grinned from ear to ear. I was selected, and my dad was even happier. In this way, he can use my top-level Omega younger brother to seek a marriage alliance with another family. And Carter's smiling face instantly cracked. He forced a smile and said to me, "Congratulations, brother. I'll toast you." Knowing that I get drunk after one drink, Carter still forced me to drink. Under everyone's noses, I had to drink it. Tasted a bit strange. Before long, I felt dizzy. Using the excuse of dizziness, I managed to leave and went to the restroom arranged by the Song family. As soon as the door opened, the mellow fragrance of sweet wine hit me. The fumes made me instantly unsteady on my feet. I quickly apologized. "Sorry, I went into the wrong room. I checked the room number. I didn't go into the wrong room." Suddenly, a hand reached out in the dimness and grabbed my wrist. Amidst the spinning world, I was pressed against the door. "There are inhibitors at the front desk. I'll call for you." I suddenly lost my voice as a sharp pain shot through the back of my neck. For a moment, I was too weak to struggle and let that strange alpha mark me. That alpha was like a dog, gnawing and biting at me. Vaguely, all I could remember was, the hotel bed was so soft that I felt like I was constantly sinking. No matter how hard I struggled, I couldn't escape the net woven by the pheromones. When it was still dawn, that alpha went to take a shower. Biting back the soreness, I quickly got dressed and ran away. If my dad found out I hadn't been home all night, there would be a huge uproar. "Brother, why are you coming in from outside so early?" I stopped in my tracks and looked at Carter, who should have been sleeping. It was just dawn. So it was Carter who had caused all this. I bit my finger, thinking of an excuse. "How much did you drink, brother?" Carter appeared beside me, his nostrils flaring slightly. What a strong smell of alcohol. At that moment, I was glad that the alpha's pheromones smelled like sweet wine. Indeed, a strong smell of alcohol can easily make people mistake it for someone having drunk alcohol. Moreover, Carter forced me to drink yesterday. I drank too much and spent the night at that hotel. Carter nodded and leaned closer to me, saying, "Do you want to enter into a marriage alliance? If you don't want to, I can take your place." My gaze intensified as I stared at Carter. I increasingly felt that it was his doing last night. He probably didn't expect this. I came back reeking of alcohol but wasn't marked. I firmly refused, saying, "No thanks. We are brothers." However, because of his high-level pheromones, Carter easily won the favor of the Lin family. An inferior Omega seemed like just a filler. Not content with being favored, Carter wanted me to disappear. From childhood to adulthood, he has always been fearless. Many times, I almost died because of him. I've had enough of my days in the Lin family. Since there's a chance for me to get rid of the Lin family, why shouldn't I take it? It's as if God is willing to give me a hand. My father is in a hurry, and so is the Song family. It's only been a month since the marriage alliance was decided. They've already arranged for me and Matthew to get married today. I waited for half an hour before he arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau. "Are you David?" Matthew looked down at me. I looked up blankly and stared into his eyes. Didn't he say himself that he wanted me? Why doesn't he recognize me when it's time to get the marriage certificate? "It's me." I stood up and rubbed my numb thigh. I followed Matthew in. The staff asked, "Have you two done a pheromone compatibility test?" "No." 97.45%. Matthew and I answered in unison. I glanced at him in surprise. Neither of us has taken the test. How is he so sure? After filling out the forms with Matthew, I sat down in front of the camera with him. "Guys, get closer and relax." Matthew sat there firmly. I had no choice but to move over and lean my whole body against Matthew. The photographer said, "Okay, smile." Matthew remained expressionless. I tried hard to pull out a smile. When I got in the car holding the little red marriage certificate, I was still in a daze. Is this how I'm married? With an alpha I've known for a short time. Matthew looked down at the marriage certificate, frowning slightly. Are you really looking forward to this marriage? I quickly put away the wedding photo. Well, isn't it normal to smile for a photo? Matthew frowned even more tightly. I sincerely complimented him, but you still look good without smiling. In the photo, Matthew had no expression, with three-dimensional features, sword-shaped eyebrows, and starry eyes. And I was next to him, smiling stiffly. It seems quite mismatched. But I have no other choice. He chose me himself. Matthew suddenly said, before the banquet, my dad helped me apply for a pheromone compatibility test at the hospital. I was stunned for a moment and didn't react until after a while. He was explaining to me the 97.45% he mentioned. So do I have the highest compatibility with you? I was a bit curious. After the differentiation of alphas and omegas, they all need to go to the hospital to have their pheromones extracted and stored in the database. In order to conduct a pheromone compatibility test, I've heard that alphas and omegas with high compatibility will get along very comfortably. I can't help but start to look forward to married life. Yes. Matthew nodded. I got pheromone rampage syndrome because of my high-level pheromones. I stared at him with wide eyes and sized him up and down. There is no sign at all that he is sick. It turns out that having high-level pheromones is not necessarily a good thing. Do you need me to do something for you? Matthew turned his head and glanced at me, then flatly refused. No need. I can control it by taking medicine. You don't have to worry about me. He paused for a moment, then handed me the marriage certificate and asked me to put it away properly. So it's best that we don't bother each other. I nodded to show that I understood. After arriving home, Matthew helped me register my fingerprint and pushed open the door. You can sleep in any room except the study. I had the idea of teasing him and deliberately asked, "Can I sleep in the master bedroom too?" Matthew stopped in his tracks and turned to look at me. He said, "It's okay if you don't mind." Hearing this, my face suddenly flushed. In a place where an alpha has lived for a long time, there will be more or less pheromones left in every corner. It made me seem so eager. I forced out 2 dry laughs and said, "I'm just joking." Matthew helped me carry my luggage to the guest room and then turned into the study. I took a simple look around. The decoration of the guest room is in warm colors. Compared with the cold, tone living room, it is very warm. I'm very satisfied and start to look forward to living here. By the time I finished unpacking, it was already dark outside the window. My stomach was growling with hunger, so I had to go to the kitchen to figure things out. There were a lot of ingredients in the fridge, but I didn't know how to cook many dishes. Soon, Matthew suddenly appeared with a gloomy face. "What are you doing?" He glanced at the blackened pot. "Since you can't live in the master bedroom, are you going to burn down the house too?" "No." I was extremely embarrassed and lowered my head so much that I wanted to bury it in the ground. In the Lin family, it was always the aunt who cooked. I didn't expect that there wouldn't be anyone to cook here at Matthew's place. Nor did I expect it. Noodles seem very easy to cook, but I burned them. Go outside and wait. Matthew snatched the pot that I was trying to salvage. I lowered my head and quickly fled the kitchen. Soon, Matthew cooked 3 dishes and 1 soup. His cooking were surprisingly good, even better than the aunt in the Lin family. I ate 3 big bowls of rice in one go. Matthew frowned and asked, "Doesn't the Lin family feed you?" "They do." I pursed my lips and explained, "Your cooking is delicious." An unusual look of uneasiness appeared on Matthew's face, unlike someone who would blow up the kitchen when hungry. After saying that, he put down the bowl and stood up. Since I had eaten his food, I took the initiative to clear the table and wash the dishes. When I finished washing the dishes and walked out of the kitchen, I unexpectedly bumped into a wall of flesh. Rubbing my aching nose, I asked with tears in my eyes, what's wrong?" He was probably afraid that I would even ruin the kitchen while washing the dishes. Standing here like a doorkeeper, Matthew took my hand away and glanced at my nose. After confirming that I was okay, he said, "When I'm not around, someone will come to cook." It seems that he really is afraid that I'll burn the house down. I replied indignantly, "Got it." After taking a shower, I just lay down. There was suddenly some movement at the door. Immediately afterwards, it was pushed open forcefully. When the door hit the wall, it made a loud bang. I was startled and looked at the intruding alpha. "Matthew," I hugged the quilt tightly and asked in a panic, "What are you doing?" We agreed not to disturb each other. What on earth was he doing barging into my room in the middle of the night? Matthew strode over with a look of grievance on his face that I had never seen before. Wife, why don't you sleep with me? What on earth was this about? In a daze, Matthew climbed onto my bed. I smelled the pheromone emanating from his body. It was the mellow smell of sweet wine. It was so familiar that it made me think of that charming night. No way? Could it be such a coincidence? Matthew is actually the dog Alpha who almost marked me? Matthew pulled open my quilt and dragged me into his arms. I was forced to straddle his lap and the pheromone was so strong that I trembled. Song, Matthew, what's wrong with you? Matthew looked up at me, his deep eyes like an abyss, almost making me sink in. Don't you like me, wife? His eyes were red at the corners and filled with tears. Why do we have to sleep in separate rooms? Amid the surging pheromone, I squeezed out a voice. You said so yourself. Who could have thought? The Alpha who is cold during the day will suddenly become like this at night. He was as hot as a stove all over, and his pheromone was so intense that it seemed to devour me. Are you in your susceptible period? I asked tremulously. Matthew shook his head like a rattle. He pressed me and kissed me, and I was kissed until I couldn't catch my breath. Smelling the strong sweet wine smell, the words he said during the day flashed through my mind. Could it be that his pheromone riot syndrome has flared up? Without time to think, Matthew pressed his teeth against my gland, barely breaking the skin. Instinctively, my hair stood on end and I struggled a few times. Matthew whispered, I want pheromones. He sounded so pitiful. His teeth were pressed against my gland, barely breaking the skin. I couldn't resist and was forced to release my pheromones. But my gland was almost exhausted and the faint smell of lychee in the air remained. All I could smell was the sweet aroma of wine. Not getting enough pheromones, Matthew found all sorts of ways to torment me. Amid the mixed pheromones, I was absolutely certain. He is the dog Alpha who bit and gnawed at me that night. Wife, pheromones, Matthew said with a nasal voice. More, he said. I was on the verge of tears. There aren't any left. When I woke up groggily, I met a pair of clear eyes. I instantly sobered up and pushed Matthew away. Apparently, Matthew had been awake for a long time. Seeing me wake up, he asked, why am I here? I was stunned for a moment. Is he trying to act like he doesn't know me after sleeping with me? Or does he know it was me that night and resents me for running away, so now he's pretending to have amnesia to anger me? I was in excruciating pain all over my body, so I couldn't help but feel a bit angry. I gave him a disdainful look. What else could it be? If you didn't come here yourself, do you think I could have carried you here? He said himself that we should stay out of each other's way, but then he climbed into my bed. He kept calling me wife and would cry and throw a tantrum if I didn't give him pheromones. After sleeping, he actually pretended not to know me. He's really getting on my nerves early in the morning. Sorry, I don't remember. His tone was as flat as if he were saying, the weather is nice today. Matthew quickly put on his clothes and stood up. Do you want to sleep more or get up? I yawned and turned over back to him irritably. None of your business. When the door slammed shut, I couldn't help but curse. Damn scumbag Alpha. The next day, before going to bed, I saw Matthew take the medicine with my own eyes. I subconsciously let out a sigh of relief. Nothing should happen tonight, right? I almost got exhausted by him last night. I still feel terrible today. Matthew suddenly looked at me. Our eyes met. Matthew looked a bit awkward and seemed to have something to say but hesitated. I took the initiative to start the conversation. Is there something wrong? Matthew swallowed hard and said, I was wrong about what happened last night. I raised my eyebrows in surprise. I thought he would continue to pretend not to know. Matthew continued, but I really don't remember. My smile froze. Really don't remember? Yes, Matthew frowned tightly. I went to see the doctor. The doctor said it might be because of the discomfort after the episode and asked me to try increasing the dosage. I pursed my lips. After thinking it over and over again, I still told him, if you're really in pain, I can help you. Matthew refused without hesitation. I immediately went back to my room and locked the door. In a daze, the door was suddenly rammed open. The door lock was broken on the spot. The dog Alpha rushed in from outside with the corners of his eyes red. Honey, the door is broken. I almost couldn't get in. I backed into the corner and stared at him warily. Didn't he take the medicine? Why did it flare up again? Matthew grabbed my ankle and gave it a hard tug. I was forced to fall into his arms. The pheromones on him were so strong that it was like falling into a wine vat, intoxicatingly rich. Thinking of his attitude of rejecting me just now, I didn't want to fulfill the so-called partner obligation anymore. Let go of me. Instead, Matthew hugged me even tighter, squeezing me so hard that I could hardly breathe. I started to resist, kicking and punching him. Matthew seemed insensitive to pain and kissed and bit me. I won't let go. Without even drinking, I was almost drunk from the sweet smell of his wine. His hand slipped into my clothes, and I instantly went weak at the knees. Wait a minute. I stopped his next move in time. Not today. Matthew looked as if the sky was falling. Why? I turned my face away and whispered, I'm still feeling unwell. Matthew compromised. Can I mark you? Please. Did I even have the right to say no? Matthew looked as if he would force himself on me if I didn't agree. Okay. Realizing that the medicine wasn't working, Matthew asked me to lock the door. He even specially changed to an expensive door lock, saying it couldn't be kicked open. But in half a month, the door broke 10 times. I simply stopped locking it. No matter how it is locked, it will eventually be rammed open by the incredibly strong alpha. I really couldn't face the door replacement master anymore. Once I sent Matthew a video. Matthew in the video was completely different from how he was during the day. Cold and taciturn during the day, a crying and coquettish person at night. After watching the video, Matthew was silent for a day. After that, every night when I wanted to take a video as evidence, Matthew always stopped me. From time to time, I suspect that he lied to me about losing his memory during the day. Otherwise, how did he know at night that I would secretly film him and stop me? Sorry, I really don't remember, and I've increased the medicine. He really did increase the medicine. He takes it in front of me every day. I guess he was also annoyed, so I didn't continue to hold him accountable. Anyway, I'm not at a loss. Thanks to him, my frequently occurring heat period has been delayed. I'm quite happy that I don't have to endure the pain of the heat. Matthew walked past me with his luggage. Don't worry, I'm going on a business trip tonight. Matthew was on a business trip for half a month. I fell into a peaceful sleep contentedly. However, the gland that had been frequently marked was a bit uncomfortable. Especially these 2 days, it always swelled, ached and itched, and I even felt nauseous. Thinking that he would come back tonight, I couldn't help feeling nervous and excited. I wanted him to push the door open, but I didn't want to be tossed around by him. When I was almost asleep hugging the quilt, the door was pushed open. Alpha climbed onto the bed with ease and pulled me into his arms. In a clingy tone, he said, "Wife, I miss you so much." Then he kissed me eagerly. Matthew nibbled on my lips and his tongue intertwined with mine, lingering. Not satisfied with just kissing, he took a bite on my gland. In an instant, the gland that hadn't been exposed to pheromones for a long time was nourished and turned pink and moist. But just when Matthew grabbed my waist, a sharp pain swept over me. I frowned and my face turned pale. Matthew let go of me and his face showed anxiety. David, what's wrong with you? I bit my lip, sweating cold, and said, my stomach, it hurts so much. Matthew instantly changed his expression and returned to his daytime appearance. He released soothing pheromones and comforted me in a low voice. Bear with it. I'll take you to the hospital. When I opened my eyes again, all I saw was white. I blinked and turned my head to avoid the glaring light. In a flash, I saw Matthew standing beside the bed, looking unhappy. Just as I was about to speak, Matthew interrupted me coldly. Explain. We've only been married for a month. Why is the baby in your belly 2 months old? I looked at him in disbelief and then down at my flat abdomen. You. I stared at his face, trying to find a trace of joking. He wasn't joking. On the contrary, he was angry. Don't understand? Matthew leaned over and put his hand on my abdomen. There's a bastard in there. I stared blankly, looking down at his hand. His hand moved upwards. Suddenly, Matthew grabbed my chin, forcing me to look up. Can't find the bastard's father, so your Lin family is so eager to find someone to take the blame? Meeting his sharp gaze, my heart skipped a beat and almost jumped into my throat. No. My mind raced as I recalled what had happened during this period. During that half month, Matthew basically just hugged me and bit me to mark me. Only occasionally did we have full-fledged sex. Even though he was like a silly big dog, he would take precautions to prevent accidents. But now an accident still happened. Then explain it. Matthew let go of his hand and stood up straight. I rubbed my chin that had been pinched red by him and recalled what he said. You just said. I bit my lip and asked, how many months is the baby? Matthew parted his thin lips slightly and said, 2 months. 2 months. I touched my lower abdomen blankly. After calming down, I quickly did some calculations. That was exactly the time at the hotel. I stared at my lower abdomen in disbelief. Is the ability of a top-level alpha really this strong? Can make a low-grade omega pregnant in one time. No wonder everyone says they want to find a top-level alpha. Seeing that I didn't say a word for a long time, Matthew sneered. What, are there too many? So, can't you remember which alpha it is? His face looked so angry that I quickly replied to him. Yours. The one who was stunned became Matthew. In a moment, he came to his senses and raised his voice. David, what nonsense are you talking about? I said firmly. I'm saying he's not a bastard. He's yours. There was disbelief on Matthew's face as he stared at me intently. I took a deep breath and picked up the ultrasound report beside me to look at it on my own. Matthew was still standing by the bed, and his gaze fell on my lower abdomen. I thought for a while and said, if you don't believe it, you can do an amniocentesis in 2 months. Then you can see the paternity test result for yourself. Matthew didn't respond. It seemed that he had no impression at all of that night in the hotel. Thinking about his memory loss incidents these days, I wasn't surprised. I tried to arouse his memory. Don't you remember? It was that day in the hotel. What hotel? Matthew was completely blank-minded. When did I ever stay in a hotel with you? I opened my mouth, and for a moment, a wave of exhaustion swept over me. Forget it. I can understand his disbelief, but I also feel wronged. Matthew, please go out. Then have a good rest. Matthew had no objection and turned to walk out. Looking at his back, my heart was filled with a soft ache, and my throat was extremely dry. When the ward door was about to close, I gently reminded him, Matthew, aren't you curious why he doesn't reject your pheromones? Until the next afternoon, I didn't see Matthew again. After Matthew's Omega father knew that I was hospitalized for pregnancy preservation, he cooked soup and brought it over. Why isn't Xiao Lian here? Judging from Matthew's expression when he left last night, he was probably very angry. He's probably still angry today. Hesitating for 2 seconds, I still chose to make excuses for him. He's busy with work. I'll scold him on the phone later. Samuel frowned. You're in the hospital, yet he still went to work. Samuel scooped up a bowl of soup and placed it in front of me. Do you have morning sickness now? No, probably because of the frequent marking and sufficient pheromone supplementation. On the contrary, I have a good appetite. Seeing that I was fine, Samuel didn't stay long. Before leaving, he looked at me thoughtfully, as if he had something to say. Hesitating for a long time, he finally spoke. David, can Dad ask you to help Matthew? Is it about his illness? If I guessed correctly. At that time, his family was eager to arrange a marriage with me because Matthew's illness needed a highly compatible Omega to treat it. Samuel nodded to confirm my guess. Taking medicine can only control the illness, not cure it. Only pheromones can relieve the symptoms. Under Samuel's expectant gaze, I nodded and agreed. The marriage is done, and I'm pregnant. Naturally, I won't stand by idly. Moreover, if Matthew doesn't get cured, I'll be the one suffering. In the evening, Matthew appeared in the hospital ward. There was no sign of emotion on his face, and his eyes were fixed on my abdomen. I felt extremely uncomfortable under his gaze and quickly covered my abdomen with a pillow. Matthew averted his gaze, pulled a chair to the bedside and sat down. He casually picked up an apple and started peeling it, saying, I asked the hotel for the surveillance footage. And then, I turned to look at him. Matthew frowned. The hotel said the surveillance was broken that day and nothing was recorded. I lowered my eyes. So, you still don't believe me, right? I interrupted Matthew. No need to explain. Anyway, the result won't change. Matthew lowered his head and said nothing, concentrating on peeling the apple. A moment later, he cut the apple into pieces, put a toothpick in it and handed it to me. I stared at him and the apple, hesitating to take a bite. Matthew directly fed it to my lips. Don't worry, I won't do anything to you guys. I heard Matthew say as the apple was fed into my mouth. Whether he is my child or not, as long as he is your child, I will provide pheromone comfort for him. After being discharged from the hospital, the second bedroom became empty. After looking around, all my things were gone. Just as I was about to ask Matthew, I saw him standing against the door frame with his arms folded. Our eyes met and he said, "Your things are in the master bedroom. Why were they moved there?" I started walking towards the master bedroom. Could it be because Samuel told him that he needed my help? Is it more convenient to move in together? Doesn't the baby need pheromones? Matthew followed me into the master bedroom. If we live together, there will still be residual pheromones here even when I'm not at home. There was a faint sweet wine aroma lingering in the air. It is the smell left by the long-term stay of an alpha. I quietly sized up Matthew's room. The cold-tone decoration style was very different from the second bedroom I initially lived in. I only realized it later. It turned out that Matthew had redecorated the second bedroom before I moved in. He didn't seem to be as averse to this arranged marriage as I thought. "I've put all your clothes in the closet," Matthew said, and then turned around and left the master bedroom. Matthew came back very late after a busy day. The sound of dripping water came from the bathroom. I hugged his quilt, smelling the faint sweet wine aroma, waiting for Matthew to come out. He took an inexplicably long time to take this bath. At first, I was a little nervous. As I waited, I got sleepy. Just as I was about to fall asleep, Matthew finally lay down. The scent of body wash mixed with the sweet aroma of wine wafted over. I felt a bit distracted. This was still the first time sharing the same bed with him when he was awake. Blushing, I covered myself with the quilt and forced myself to fall asleep. But habit is a very terrifying thing. Having gotten used to Matthew holding me while sleeping, I couldn't feel sleepy at all at this moment. After tossing and turning a few times, a deep voice came from behind. "Can't sleep?" I froze in my movements. "Well, a little." After a long time, I heard Matthew mumble, "I can't sleep either." I was stunned for a second and then turned over to face him. Staring at his superior side profile, my heart suddenly started to race. My gland started to itch without warning, and I reached out to scratch it. After thinking for a moment, I chose my words carefully and said, "Dad told me the other day that your illness can only be relieved by pheromones." Matthew lifted his eyelids and glanced at me, saying nothing. "So?" I swallowed hard. "Do you want to mark me?" By the light of the night light, I easily saw Matthew's Adam's apple pop. He clearly wanted to mark me too, but he didn't dare to say it. Matthew asked in a low voice, "Do you want it?" By the light of the night light, I easily saw Matthew's Adam's apple pop. Pressing my lips together, I asked aloud, "So, do you want to mark me now?" Matthew paused in his breathing. "Do you want it?" I blushed and pulled the quilt up to cover my face. I whispered an excuse for myself, "It's not that I want it. It's the baby who wants it." The room fell silent for a moment. After a short while, there came a rustling sound from beside me. I subconsciously held my breath and hugged the quilt tightly, at a loss. Suddenly, the person beside me reached out and put his arm around my waist. I stiffened my body and was turned over by Matthew to face away from him. My collar was pulled down, exposing my gland. I swallowed hard and secretly looked forward to it. However, Matthew didn't move for a long time. What's wrong?" I asked nervously. "It's okay." Matthew rubbed my gland. I moaned softly and hugged the quilt even tighter. The next moment, something soft touched me with a moist feeling. It was a gentle kiss. Before I could savor it, a stinging pain followed. The sweet wine, like scent, rushed into my gland one after another, and I couldn't help but tremble. Time seemed so long that my mind went blank. It was not until I felt a stinging and moist licking sensation on the back of my neck that I woke up from my daze. "Sorry, the doctor said that since it wasn't a complete mark, I need to bite deeper." Matthew got out of bed, took a plaster, and helped me put it on. After the marking, he held me in his arms just like before. I found a comfortable position and finally managed to fall asleep. Gradually, my flat abdomen began to bulge. The presence of the baby became more and more intense. Matthew also became more and more attentive to me and the baby. He kept his promise. As long as he was at home, the pheromone with the sweet wine aroma always lingered around me. Looking at his busy back in the kitchen, my heart skipped a beat and I walked over quickly. I asked casually as if by accident, "What are we having for dinner tonight? Didn't you say you wanted to eat?" Before he could finish speaking, I stood on tiptoe and gave him a peck on the cheek. Matthew stood still as if he had been rooted to the spot and was stunned. Only after I kissed him did I feel shy. On an impulse, I just acted as soon as I wanted to kiss him. But I didn't think about whether Matthew would accept my sudden kiss. I took 2 steps back and smiled awkwardly. Just as I was about to use "the baby wants the pheromone" as an excuse, he suddenly pressed my head and kissed me back. I let out a few mmph sounds and struggled to no avail. I could only be forced to tilt my head back and be kissed breathless by him. The only thing I could do was to cling to his neck so as not to fall to the ground because of my weak legs. The rapid thumping of the heartbeat filled my ears. I couldn't tell whether it was his or mine. When it was over, I was teary-eyed and stared blankly into his eyes. "Matthew," said hoarsely as he wiped the corner of my mouth, "go watch TV for a while, or we won't be able to have dinner tonight." My eyes darted around, and when I caught sight of a certain part of him that was very much in an excited state, I immediately fled the kitchen in a hurry. I felt both embarrassed and ashamed. After dinner, I carried a fruit bowl to the living room. Matthew was watching financial news. "Come here." I walked over as he said. As soon as I put down the bowl, Matthew had already lifted me onto his lap. He has been different lately. In the past, he would only show his clingy side before going to bed. But these 2 days, as long as he's at home, he has to have me by his side wherever he is. The smell of sweet wine was stronger than ever. I couldn't help but ask, "Is your susceptible period coming soon?" Matthew gave a soft hum and popped a grape into my mouth. My heart skipped a beat for no reason. "Then what should we do?" "It's okay." Matthew rubbed the tip of his nose against the back of my neck. "Just take an inhibitor." A sudden wave of guilt washed over me. Matthew has always been providing me with soothing pheromones. Now I can't soothe his susceptible period. I opened my mouth, but couldn't think of any good solutions. Matthew changed the subject. "Is it time for the prenatal check up tomorrow?" His hand moved towards my abdomen, gave it a gentle touch, and then intertwined his fingers with mine. "Yes." I nodded. "Will you go with me?" I glanced at the reminder on my phone. It's just the right time for an amniocentesis. "Come with me." Without waiting for Matthew to answer, I made the decision for him. "Let's do the amniocentesis tomorrow, and you can have a blood test for the paternity test." Matthew tightened his grip on my hand. "No need." He paused for a moment and added, "I've looked it up. Amniocentesis might harm the baby. We have to do it." I let go of his hand and stood up. Just thinking about Matthew's skeptical look before makes me feel like there's a fishbone stuck in my throat. After all, you don't trust me. Matthew missed several previous prenatal checkups. This is the first time he's accompanied me here. I smoothly lay on the bed and pulled up my clothes. Matthew was directed by the doctor to sit by the bed and release soothing pheromones. When the strong heartbeat sound came from the fetal heart monitor, the sweet wine-like scent of his pheromone wavered for a moment. He asked in confusion, "What's this?" The doctor explained it's the baby's heartbeat. It's a bit faster than in adults. Then the doctor did an ultrasound on me. Matthew's eyes sparkled as he stared intently at the fuzzy little blob on the screen. Soothed by the pheromones, the baby stretched in my belly. Matthew and I glanced at each other and couldn't help smiling. When it was over, Matthew wiped the coupling agent off my belly. "David, what's the matter?" I glanced sideways at the alpha walking beside me. After a moment of silence, Matthew shook his head. "It's nothing." He accompanied me to have the amniocentesis sample taken and silently released pheromones to soothe me. After the amniocentesis, Matthew drove me back. We remained silent all the way. I quietly looked at the little blob on the ultrasound report. Before getting out of the car, Matthew suddenly spoke up. "Sorry, it was my fault that I missed the previous prenatal check-ups." I looked at him in surprise. Matthew didn't continue. He leaned over. I instinctively closed my eyes and held my breath. With a click, the seat belt loosened. Only then did I realize I had misunderstood and blushed with embarrassment. Matthew only realized it later. He propped his hand on the car window and asked in a low voice, "Do you need pheromones?" "Yes, I do." So we shared a long kiss. Matthew straightened up. "Don't wait for me for dinner." Late at night, Matthew rushed back. He looked tired with an unnatural blush on his cheeks. I asked, "Are you in your susceptible period?" Matthew stood quietly beside the bed for a while. After a long while, he slowly shook his head. It seemed that he didn't control his pheromones well and they were floating randomly in the air. "Then you are." His pheromones smelled like sweet wine. I couldn't tell whether he had drunk wine or his pheromones were too strong. Matthew leaned towards me, his voice hoarse and full of exhaustion. "Can I hug you?" Why did he even ask? When he asked, I felt extremely shy instead. I nodded, but he didn't move at all. Finally, I reached out and hugged him actively. As soon as our bodies touched, I found that his body temperature was alarmingly high. "Matthew, you're having a fever." I was in a panic and half dragged, half hugged him. "It's okay." Matthew let go of me and walked straight towards the bathroom. I couldn't get a clear answer after asking for a long time, and I was also tired. Lying back in bed, I tried to fall asleep again. When Matthew came out of the bathroom, I still couldn't fall asleep. The sound of the water was so annoying and noisy. Matthew was also so annoying. He kept silent when I showed concern for him. I sat up angrily. "Matthew, if you don't tell me, don't get into bed tonight." Matthew stopped in his tracks and seemed determined to remain silent. I stroked my belly. "My stomach hurts. I need your pheromones." Matthew sighed silently. He squatted beside the bed and released his pheromones. I pursed my lips. "You're having a fever. I'm really worried. But when I ask you questions, you don't say a word." As I spoke, my eyes inexplicably welled up with tears. "If you really hate me, let's end this marriage." "I don't hate you." Matthew suddenly grabbed my hand. "Sorry. I just didn't want you to worry." I tried to shake off his hand. "But if you don't say anything, I'll still worry." Matthew kissed my forehead. "I'm fine. I just took a strong inhibitor." A sour feeling spread densely from my heart. I took a deep breath and whispered, "The doctor said that now we can." Matthew covered my face with his hand, blocking my sight. He urged, "Go to sleep quickly. If you stay up late, the baby will too." "Really not." I watched him lie down. "Just hugging is enough." Matthew got through his susceptible period. My father asked me to take him back for Carter's birthday. With the support of the Song family, my father now finds me pleasing in every way. "How are you getting along with Matthew?" There was a flattering look in his eyes that I had never seen before. So. I quietly tugged at my clothes, glad that I wore a coat today. The baby bump wasn't big and could still be covered. I don't want them to know about this. Dinner hadn't started yet, so I dragged Matthew upstairs first. Unexpectedly, Carter was waiting for us at the door of the room. "Brother Lien, you and my brother are back." Carter smiled and approached, with a strong pheromone on his body. I frowned and pulled Matthew back a few steps. "You know there's an alpha here. Why aren't you wearing a blocking patch? What are you afraid of? Haven't you two marked each other?" Carter stared at me. "Or did my brother get marked by someone else that night?" I unconsciously tightened my grip and clenched the corner of my clothes. Matthew protected me in his arms, looking displeased. "It's not your place to ask." "Brother Lien, do you know that my brother slept with another alpha that night at the hotel?" I immediately looked nervously at the alpha beside me. Matthew really never believed that it was him who was with me that night, but I was afraid that he would say it out loud. "I know." As soon as the words were out, my heart tightened. The baby is already a few months old, yet he still doesn't believe me. Immediately afterwards, Matthew added, "That alpha is me." "Impossible!" Carter exclaimed in disbelief. "I had everything arranged that day. How could it be you?" As soon as the words fell, the air fell into silence. Realizing that he had blurted out something he shouldn't have, Carter immediately went back into the room. Not long after I got back to my room, my mom called me downstairs to chat with her. Although I'm not in favor, I'm still her biological child after all. "Is Matthew a nice guy?" My mom looked me up and down. "You seem to have put on some weight." I pinched my cheeks. "Is it obvious that I've gained weight?" "Not really." My mom shook her head and started the topic of urging me to have a baby. I nodded vaguely, actually covering my pregnant belly again and again. Without warning, a strong alpha pheromone exploded in the room. The sense of oppression unique to an alpha made everyone in the villa break out in a cold sweat. Only I was safe and sound. I suddenly realized that this was Matthew's pheromone. The sweet wine aroma was out of control, mixing with the strange omega pheromone and spreading rapidly. I panicked and rushed upstairs in a flurry. I knew it. Carter wouldn't let it go easily. In front of the closed door, faint cries of pain and heavy gasps came through. Holding the spare key, I hesitated to push open the door. What if something happened? What should I do? The pheromone was so strong. What's going on, David? My mother rushed over in a hurry. Why is the pheromone so strong? Meeting my red-rimmed eyes, she was stunned for a second and murmured, "No way." Carter was still in his own room just now. The door was kicked open with a bang. The chaotic pheromone hit me in the face, making me feel nauseous. I was startled by the scene in the room. On the carpet, a pool of blood was extremely eye-catching. Carter was rolling on the ground, covering his neck and screaming in pain. Why can David do it, but I can't? My mother came to her senses, went over and hugged Carter, asking all sorts of questions. All that responded to her were Carter's wails. I didn't see Matthew's figure, but only smelled his pheromone. I retched, leaned on the door frame and shouted, "Matthew!" Matthew walked out of the bathroom with a gloomy face and pale lips. There was blood on his clothes and also on his neck. Matthew walked towards me without even giving a glance to the mother and son beside him. "I'm fine." After saying that, he staggered and almost fell. I struggled to support him downstairs, and the driver of the Song family came to help. Only after getting in the car did I realize that Matthew's gland was bleeding. "What did you do to your gland?" Matthew smoothed the crease between my eyebrows and said softly, "I cut it with a knife." He said it so lightly that my heart ached even more. "Sorry. I shouldn't have brought you back to the Lin family." Matthew brushed the corner of my eye with his fingertips and said gently, "Don't cry. Give me some pheromones. David, it hurts a bit." I wiped away my tears in a hurry and quickly released soothing pheromones for him. After Matthew got his wound bandaged, he also had a pheromone check. His pheromone riot syndrome was cured because of the gland injury. The illness was actually induced by pheromone overload. Now that the gland is scratched and a small piece is missing, it won't secrete too much pheromone. This is actually a blessing in disguise. On the way back, we ran into my mother. Carter's gland was cut so deeply that almost the whole gland was rotten. If it can't be cured, the whole gland will have to be removed later. Due to the power of the Song family, my mother dared not show her anger when facing Matthew. Matthew said expressionlessly, "Since Carter dared to drug David, of course he has to dare to bear the corresponding consequences." After saying that, he ignored them and led me out of the hospital and went home. When we got home, I looked at the gauze around his neck and thought of what he had just said. I had held it in for the whole journey, and I couldn't hold back from asking him, "If you had marked Carter, would you divorce me and marry him?" Matthew glanced at me. "No, it's impossible for me to mark him." "Why?" Matthew simply covered my mouth. There are no so many whys. Before I could continue asking, a new message suddenly popped up on my phone. It was the result of the paternity test. It was something already confirmed, and I was too lazy to open it. After thinking about it, I still asked Matthew, "The result is out. Do you want to take a look?" Matthew seemed to have forgotten about this matter. "What?" After opening the report, I handed the phone to him. Matthew glanced at it a few times and then gave it back to me. I could smell the sweet wine fragrance becoming chaotic again. Getting closer, I could even hear Matthew's rapid heartbeat. Staring at his profile, I asked softly, "Is it the result you wanted?" Matthew nodded and his big hand touched my slightly swollen belly. "If it was Carter that night and he was the one who got pregnant, would you cancel the alliance marriage with me and take responsibility for him and the child?" I always clung to this matter. I wanted Matthew to say the answer I wanted with his own mouth. "There is no what if," Matthew said firmly. "If it was him that night, I wouldn't have lost control." "Then are you happy?" Before I could finish my sentence, Song Gigi covered my mouth with his lips. Wrapped in the sweet wine fragrance, my body became light and seemed to float into the air. Matthew placed me on the velvet quilt. "There won't be anyone else and there won't be any other possibilities." He intertwined his fingers with mine, looking serious. "Because I only like you." Finally, I heard the answer I wanted. I smiled satisfactorily and pulled him into a kiss. From Matthew's perspective, when I learned that I had to find an Omega to marry, I was in a very bad mood. Especially when my dad applied for a pheromone compatibility test for me. There was an omega whose pheromone compatibility with me was 97.45%. I was even more reluctant. But all the reluctance. When I saw that omega at the dinner party, I suddenly became willing. It seems that having a beautiful omega living with oneself is also a very good thing. The other person looks dull. When being called by oneself, his eyes were wide open like a fawn's, round and big. On the day of getting the marriage certificate, there was a traffic jam on the road and I was half an hour late. When I arrived, David was squatting by the flower bed playing with his phone. Worried that something like a substitute marriage might happen, I asked. Once the other person showed a blank expression, Song Gigi confirmed that it was David himself. I'm not sure if the omega likes me. I had to restrain myself. But the more I restrained myself, the more likely something would go wrong. The next day, when I woke up, I was in David's bed. I had a complete blank in my mind about what happened on the wedding night. His accusing look made me flustered. For several consecutive days, I had blackouts. Realizing it was the influence of the pheromone riot syndrome, I took more medicine. But I didn't tell David. I continued to pretend to have blackouts and enjoy David's comfort to me. Unexpectedly, he actually had a backup plan and took a video. In the video, I don't want to admit that alpha is me. So stupid, crying and making a fuss. David seems to like me like this. However, when he looks at me, there is always a bit of fear in his eyes. I was on a business trip for half a month. He had a great time alone. When I came back from the business trip, it was like the sky had fallen. David is pregnant. The child is not mine. We've been married for a month, but he's been pregnant for 2 months. He said the child is mine. I can't believe that we slept together 2 months ago. Because I really have no impression of it at all. Maybe he was just trying to placate me because he was afraid I'd get angry. I was really angry. She is pregnant with another alpha's child and the other party is not taking responsibility. How I wish the child were mine. But after calming down, I don't really care. He's already married to me. It doesn't matter whose child it is. As long as David is my omega. David wants to keep the child, so I'll provide him with soothing pheromones. The susceptible period is here. I'm going to the hospital to get a strong inhibitor. Even if David offered to help me, I still refused. What if I lose control during my susceptible period? What if I hurt him? I don't dare to take the risk. When I accompanied David back to the Lin family, an accident happened. Carter found out that David and I weren't fully marked yet. Unmarked alphas and omegas are easily affected by pheromones. Carter attempted to induce me into my susceptible period. I remembered the fact that Carter admitted to drugging David with his own mouth. I lost my temper for a moment and scratched his gland. At that time, my susceptible period that I had just suppressed was triggered. I had no choice but to cut myself as well. Unexpectedly, I turned misfortune into good fortune. My illness was cured. The paternity test result came out and the baby is really mine. All of a sudden, I found that I'm very lucky. The omega in the arranged marriage is of the type I like, and our compatibility is also very high. David was drugged with an inducer, and it happened that I was the one who helped him. And we even had a baby because of that. It just so happens that he likes me. I also like him.